Douglas Murray, let's start with the suicidal self-loathing and stupidity that we see among the modern left, and they've reached a new low yet again. Have a look at this TikTok trend featuring thousands of what seem to be educated Americans talking about reading Osama bin Laden's letter to America, where he explains why he attacked the US. These TikTokers say this letter opened their eyes and made them reevaluate how they see the world.
Osama bin Laden's letter to America explaining why he attacked Americans. This has left me very disillusioned, and I feel the same exact way I felt when I was deconstructing Christianity.
I will never look at life the same. I will never look at this country the same. Please read it, and if you have read it, let me know if you are also going through an existential crisis in this very moment, because in the last 20 minutes, my entire viewpoint on the entire life I have believed and I have lived has changed.
In reading the letter, I could only think of this tweet that I saw the other day. Under settler colonialism, any kind of resistance is branded as terrorist because the only acceptable violence is violence by the occupier.
Douglas, we're in deep trouble, aren't we?
I think we are. The parents of these kids or young people have completely failed. They've completely failed to educate their children in any way whatsoever. Their children have become these empty-headed, empty vessels into which any ignorance, it seems, can pour. I'm amazed by this, and there aren't many things I feel like I can still be amazed by, Rita. But I'm amazed by this, not least because Osama bin Laden's letter to America, his pre-9/11 rantings, you would have thought might have been slightly cast into a negative light by 9/11, for instance, and treated at least with the sort of amount of skepticism that you might apply to, say, a school shooter's manifesto. Not that any school shooter, appalling as they are, has ever come close to what Osama bin Laden managed to do in his benighted career. But secondly, the thing that's amazing about it is, of course, is that these kids seem to be kids. Actually, some of them adults. Seem to be have their whole lives sort of turned upside down by something which I suspect most of which they had absolutely no understanding of. One of Osama bin Laden's chief criticisms of America before 9/11 was its involvement in East Timor. I would love to see if any of these young people in question know even what I'm talking about when I say the words East Timor. I once did a discussion about Osama bin Laden on the BBC with a left-wing editor, and I said East Timor in regards to Osama bin Laden, and in the break, I saw her Googling East Timor on her phone. And the staggering idiocy of these people is just legion. But yes, there's always another circle to the inferno, isn't there?
Now, you've been in Gaza. Indeed, you went through the same part of the fence that the Hamas terrorists broke through on that morning on October 7. Tell me what you saw in Gaza, the scale of the suffering there, and what you think is going to come next.
Yes, you're right. This week I managed to go to Gaza through the route, as you mentioned, that Hamas terrorists poured on October the 7th. On the way in, we saw a very small number of journalists were allowed in. We were shown, among other things, a new tunnel, one of the Hamas terror tunnels that the IDF had discovered. They blew it up in front of us as part of this huge underground network. Of course, we've said before, but it bears repeating that Hamas, could have made Gaza into the Singapore on the sea, and they made it into this sort of hole where they just dug down and dug their terror tunnel network. So we saw that and saw the IDF trying to destroy part of that. and further were the first journalists to view the humanitarian corridor that the Israelis had opened up. We were just up from the Al-Shifa hospital, which the world's been concentrated on this week, and just up the road from the Shifa hospital, we're able to see the movement of Gazans from north to south under the directions of the IDF. We're trying to encourage them to get out of the area of operations which the IDF and Hamas are operating in, which is very much sort of door-to-door fighting, a lot of airstrikes, a lot of tank and anti-tank artillery, a lot of machine gun back and forth. Yes, I mean the Gaza Strip is pretty ruined as far as I could see. But when we rolled out at sundown, it was very obvious, another reminder of why they're there. You come out past the Gaza fence at the kibbutz of Be'eri, which was pretty much completely decimated on October the 7th. Be'eri was a small, mainly left-wing kibbutz, like so many of the others around there, filled with people who had peaceful, peace now intentions, wanted to live in peace with their neighbors in Gaza, and were raped, slaughtered, and burned in their houses on October the 7th. It's a reminder on the way out of why the Israelis have gone in.
Now, you spoke about those humanitarian corridors, and you wrote about Hamas trying to stop Gazans from leaving the north of the Gaza Strip. It wants human shields. Tell me about these reports of Hamas actually gunning down their own people, gunning down civilians who are trying to flee.
Yes, not far from where I was, that happened. The Gaza and the Hamas in the Gaza were initially, by the way, when the IDF told Gazans to move south. Of course, Hamas tried to keep them in their houses. Tried to persuade Gazans to stay. And whereas the IDF were dropping leaflets and text messaging the people of Gaza to tell them to move south, Hamas used the more Hamas-like approach of just massacring people as they moved. Of course, in their international wisdom, the international press, to a great extent, said that this was the Israelis who had gunned down the civilians. The Israelis have no need to or wish to gun down civilians going from north to south. They wish only to capture, first of all, Hamas leaders, and secondly, to try to find some of the 240 Israeli civilians, completely innocent civilians who were torn from their houses and families on October 7th and are currently believed to be in Gaza as hostages. So that's the only reason the Israelis have to be searching people as they go south. Hamas used its own normal tactics, and once again it showed its great love of the Palestinian people by shooting them as they fled. All of this is a reminder that the international community, which forever calls for Israel to have a ceasefire, seems to be completely silent on the question of Hamas and Hamas's ceasefire, not least a ceasefire against the citizens of Gaza.